Hi guys, I'm Peggy from the Witch's Garden, trying to grow a cut flower garden here on my wee allotment in Kanagawa Prefecture, Japan. Thanks for checking out my channel. Okay, so it's been a few days since I've been down at the allotment because we had quite a lot of rain, which is great for the garden, but it means that I have not been down and lots of my sunflower have opened up. So today we're going to be looking at harvesting my sunflower. Now, I came down a few days ago and noticed that some of my sunflower were ready to be harvested, and I kind of panicked a little. I was like, oh no, flowers, I wasn't expecting them. I grabbed one of the plastic bottles that's been sitting in my allotment. I filled it up with some water from the neighbouring allotment's water butt. So dirty bottle, kind of dirty water. Cut my flowers with my normal secateurs that I use in the garden. Took them home and threw them in a vase. And they looked pretty for 3 days, and then on the third day they literally disintegrated. The stems just fell apart. So today I am down to harvest my sunflower, and I'm going to do it properly this time, and hopefully we'll get a much longer vase life on them. So this is how I am going to harvest my sunflower. Okay, so a really important factor is when to harvest your sunflower. Now, we had lots of butterfly, sorry. We had lots of rain yesterday, which is great because for once the soil is soaked. You want your flowers to have as much water in them as possible when you cut them. So if you have had a day of rain, then you can go out the next day and cut your flowers. That's great, they're going to be full. If it's not raining, then you want to water them a couple of hours before you cut them at least. Preferably water them the night before you're going to cut them and then come out in the morning. That gives your flowers the longest time to soak up the water during the cooler evenings. And then you want to come out in the morning. Now it is actually 9:30 here. I would have liked to be down here earlier, but I have 3 young children, so if I get out of the house before 10 a.m. any morning, I'm happy with myself. That's a win. I would like to be down earlier. It was cooler this morning, it was overcast, and it's only just started to heat up, so that's good, but you do want to try and get out as early as possible. As soon as the sun starts to hit these leaves, they're going to start to photosynthesize, and that takes water away from the plant. So you want to get out here before the sun hits so that you're getting the plants when they've got as much water in them as possible. Okay, so the next important step is when to cut your flower. We've talked about when in the day to cut your flower, which is in the morning or in the evening, just when it's a bit cooler. Next is when in the life cycle of the flower to cut. Now, like I say, I've not been down in a few days, so a lot of these are wide open. Now, for the likes of my zinnia, which you can see back there, and dahlia, you want your flowers to be wide open when you harvest them, because once they're cut, they won't open anymore, especially with your dahlia. With sunflower, that's not the case. You actually want to get these ones are all too late. Now, I'm going to cut them because these are just for me at home, so I don't mind if the petals fall quickly. But if you're growing these to sell, then these are too far gone. What you want to get, this one is just starting to open, but this is even better, where you can just see the first few petals are starting to unfurl. Now, once you cut this and put it in water, it will continue to open and will very quickly look like this. The difference is that the bees haven't got to this. As soon as any pollinators get onto your flower and take the pollen, the flower knows it, and it stops putting any energy into the flower and starts putting everything into seed production. So as soon as a bee lands on this, your flower's life is completely shortened. It's going to start wanting to turn into seeds and make seeds instead. So you want to try and get your flowers just as they're opening, your sunflower, just as they're opening before any bees have got to them, and that's going to give you the longest vase life. So this is perfect. It's called the kiss. It looks like it's kind of kissing you, if you look that way. I like a kiss. Yeah, that's what you want. So too far gone, but I'll take them anyway. Perfect. So we're looking for flowers that look like this to cut. Okay, so the next important thing is your tools. Now, a lot of people think because flowers grow in the dirt, they don't mind being dirty, and that is not the case. Like I said, last time I came down, I grabbed one of these bottles that was lying around that had mud on it, and I filled it up with water from a water butt. Both of these are bad ideas, guys. Anything that you're putting your flowers into, be it when you're cutting them or when you're putting them in vases, that vase or that vessel should be clean enough for you to drink out of. If you're not comfortable drinking out of it, then either your flowers, you need to clean it out with soap and water, just like you would a normal glass. Clean it out, make sure that there is no bacteria left, because that will kill your flowers very, very quickly. Same goes for your cutters, what you're cutting with. You want these to be sharp, because if you're using scissors, that's fine, but you want them to be sharp because you want to be cutting your stems, not crushing them. And if you're using a blunt pair of scissors or snippers, then you're going to be crushing the stems and they're not going to be able to take up as much water. So you want to make sure these are sharp, and you want to make sure these are clean. So I just rubbed these down with some spray alcohol before I came down, so these are nice and clean. Like I say, I washed out my vessel. This is actually for carrying rice in, but because I come down on my bicycle, it has a lid, so that's good. You want this to be nice and clean, and you want the water to not be cold. Sitting it at room temperature is great. You want to have water with you when you're cutting your flowers, because you're going to put them straight into water. As soon as you make the cut, they're going to go straight into the water, and they're going to stay there until you recut them to put them in your arrangement. So having something out in the field or the garden with you when you're cutting is really important. So this is my water and my snippers. And the final issue is where to cut your flower. Now if we look at this one, like I say, this one's too open, but it's just for me, so I'm going to take it, that's fine. If we follow the stem back, you can see here we've got another bud that isn't open yet. Now a lot of people would be tempted to cut there and just take that one flower and leave that bud to open. But if you do that, your plant's not going to give you out much of another long stem. Because these are cut and come again flowers, this sunflower will put out another stem when I cut this one. So instead of cutting it here, I'm actually going to take this bud as well and hope that it opens up in the vase. So I'm going to continue down and cut this one here. Now there's another bud coming up on there. If you wanted, you could go down further still and cut it here, but I think I'm going to stop and I'm going to take the cut there. And that will mean that the sunflower will put up another nice long stem for me with a new flower on it. When you're cutting your flowers as well, you just want to make sure that you're going in nice and deep where we said we would, and you're cutting at an angle like this. That just means that your flower is going to have the biggest surface area possible open to be able to take up the water. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and look through all these, find which ones are perfect. Like I say, quite a lot of them are past the point of when I would want to harvest. This one's perfect. That's what we're looking for. But I'm just going to take all the open ones as well. Even if you weren't going to be using the open ones in an arrangement, you want to take them anyway because it encourages your sunflower to put out new buds and new flowers, and you want to keep these going for as long as you can. So the more you cut, the more flowers will come. If you leave them on the plant will think its job is done and just start putting all its energy into making seed instead of making new flowers. So even if you're not going to use your sunflower, you should be coming out and deadheading them anyway to encourage new growth. Once you've cut your flowers and you're putting them in the water, you want to keep them in the shade. Sunflowers love the sun until they're cut, and then they do not. So you want to make sure that you've got your water sitting in a nice, cool, shady place. Can you see my water there? Yeah. Nice, cool, shady place until you're finished cutting them all, and then take them inside. Don't leave them sitting out in the sun, because that will make them droop or wilt. As you're cutting your flowers, you want to take off any leaves that you don't want. It just means that more energy is going into, more water has to be put into the leaves to keep them looking nice, and if the leaves end up in the water at any point, if you leave them on low down, then they're going to make the water dirty and smelly, and that will shorten your vase life as well. So it's easier just to strip off the leaves you don't need when you're out in the field getting them. There we go, our first sunflower. Yay! There we have it, team. My first sunflower harvest in the garden. Now, not surprisingly, most of these are from the plum, which aren't actually as plum as I thought they would be. I do have, I think that's one copper queen here, this kind of more orangey one, and I do have a couple of the Valentine. This one, this nice yellow one. It doesn't surprise me though, because the plum have been the superstars all the way. They were the first to germinate. They grew the tallest at home, and they were the biggest when I put them in. So it doesn't surprise me that they're going first, although they're not the tallest in the garden. Those huge big ones. The huge big ones you can see there are actually my copper queen, and none of them are ready yet. I'm starting to get a bit worried that when they are ready, I'm going to be too short to cut them. I have to bring a step ladder down with me. So that's all that I'm going to do in the garden for today. You can see my zinnia have started to come up here. My amaranth is doing really well. My cosmos is budding. I've got some ami coming, and my verbena, verbascum, is coming up here as well. I might take some of that with me today as well, just to mix some with the sunflowers, but everything else just needs a little bit longer. I think the next thing that's going to be ready to cut is my zinnia. I'm not 100% happy with my zinnia, but that's what we'll talk about in next week's video. I'll tell you what's going on with them, why I'm not happy with them, and how to harvest them as well. So for now, I'm going to take these sunflower home as quickly as I can in the bicycle to try and keep them out of the sun as long as possible. And then I'm going to condition them. So conditioning them is stripping them of the leaves, which I've actually already done here. It's easier to do it in the field because I can throw them down. That's fine. Then you're going to let them rest in a cold, dark place. Now, a lot of people don't know this, that you should always, if you're cutting your own flowers, you should always let them rest for at least a couple of hours, preferably overnight. I'm going to leave mine in a dark cupboard overnight. Flowers are actually in shock when you cut them, and it takes them a little while to stabilize themselves. If you try and arrange them straight away, they're not going to last as long. So they like to have a little bit of a rest period just to get over the shock of being cut, and then I will start arranging them tomorrow. But I'll show you me doing that at home as well. So for now, that's all from the field. Hey guys, so here are my flowers. I picked these on Wednesday. I brought them home. I took them out of the container that I had them in. I put them in cold-ish water, kind of more room temperature water. I cut the stems again, and then I put them in my pantry, so somewhere a bit cooler and a bit darker, and I left them overnight. That was Wednesday. Thursday, which was yesterday, Thursday morning, I changed the water again, I cut the stems again, and I added some flower food in. Now, when you buy your flowers at a florist or at a supermarket, you always get the little packet of flower food, and for some reason for years I didn't put that in my flowers. I don't know, I thought it was like a weird chemical and I didn't want to put it in, and I'm not really sure why. I just didn't like the idea of putting it in, and that was silly because your flowers will live so much longer if you put it in. So when you cut your flower, you are cutting off all its food and all its water. So everyone knows you've got to put water in to keep them alive. The water from the tap that we use is slightly alkaline, so you need to make that slightly more acidic. Then the flowers aren't getting any form of food. They need some kind of sugar to live off. And then, because that's what is created when they photosynthesize, is that they're making carbohydrates and sugar. So they need something like that to keep them alive. And finally, when they do start to break down and rot, they'll make the water go dirty. They'll get bacteria in the water. Now that's why it's really important at the very beginning to make sure that you're using clean water in a clean vase, because if there's no bacteria there to start with, then obviously it'll take a lot longer for that to build up in the water. But basically, this stuff is exactly that. It is something to keep the water clean, it's something to feed the flowers with, and it's something to keep the water a little bit more acidic than the alkaline stuff that comes out of your tap. So there are recipes online that you can use. Some people use the vinegar or lemon juice for something acidic. You can put in a little bit of sugar for the sugars, and then a couple of drops of bleach to keep your water clean. So if you don't want to buy this kind of stuff, then you don't have to. You can use homemade recipes. But if you're going to be doing this regularly like I am, then it's probably best to buy this. Now this was the only one that was available in my local shop, although it does say here, Europa Ichiban. So apparently this is the biggest seller in Europe too. So any kind of flower food basically you want to be putting in your water. That was yesterday and this is today. So you can see the flowers are still looking really nice. Now I didn't do anything fancy with this arrangement, I just kind of stuck them in the vase. I have done a crisscross sellotape pattern over the top of my vase just to make sure that the flowers could fill up the vase quite nicely and stand tall, because I didn't have a massive amount of flowers. Okay, so when I picked these flowers, you'll remember me saying that some of them were too far gone. Some of them had already opened too much, the bees would have got to them and they weren't perfect for picking. And you can see this is one of them. And already by day 3, this has lost quite a lot of its petals. And that's because that's already been pollinated by a bee and the flower has gone into making seed mode, so it's going to drop all of its petals. But most of the others, in fact, this one's lost 1 petal here. But all of the others, you can see all the ones that I cut that were closed have now all opened up. Now most of these are my plum variety, and they are an F1 variety which have been bred for cutting, and so they don't create any pollen. So you'll notice I have no pollen drop here at all, but that's because these are the special F1 kind. Now these orange ones over here are not, and you can see the pollen building up on them, although I haven't had much drop. Literally this little bit on the side of the vase is all that I've had so far. So this is us technically on day 3 having cut the flowers, and they're still looking good and going strong. So I am today going to, later on this evening, I'm going to take the flowers out. I'm going to change the water in there and put in a little bit more of the flower food solution for them, and just check if the stems are starting to seal over at the ends where they've tried to heal themselves. I might cut a little bit extra off the stem, but that's really important. I think a lot of people put flowers in a vase and then just leave them and wait for them to die, but actually if you change your water maybe every 3 days, you're going to get a lot more life out of your flowers. So I'll change the water tonight and that's it, and then we'll come back over the next few days and see how long these guys actually last. Hey guys, okay, so it's now Tuesday. I picked these last Wednesday, and I think it's time to say goodbye. So I cleared out the water on Saturday morning. I ended up doing it. Some of the flowers that I already said were too open when we picked them, they'd already been pollinated, so by the Saturday morning they were already dropping their petals. So I got them out and put these in a much smaller vase because obviously there were less flowers, and they've looked okay, but now they're definitely, yeah, looking a bit worse for wear. Now if these were in a bouquet instead of just being one big bunch of sunflowers, if these were mixed in with other things, they might still be okay, and some of them are still not bad. This one's okay, those ones are okay, but you can see that a lot of them are starting to look just a bit scraggly and starting to drop their petals. Yeah, that one's dropping them as we touch them. So I think it's time to say goodbye to these guys. So that was a 6-day vase life. If we, yeah, say I cut them on Wednesday. So 5 to 6 days, which for sunflowers isn't bad. I would like it to be better. Like I say, a lot of them I cut when they were already a little bit too open for cutting, and so they went quicker. But generally that's what you're looking at, is about a 7-day vase life on them. Now saying that, it is exceptionally hot here and really, really humid. So maybe if you're in a slightly cooler climate and it's not so humid, your flowers will last longer. But I mean, I'm wilting and I'm getting watered every day. So I think I'm going to take these out of the jar and say that's it. But a 6-day vase life could be better, but yeah, in these circumstances I'm okay with that. I have got another big arrangement of sunflowers that I cut halfway through the week, and I cut some more last night because all of the sunflowers are coming in the garden now, so I have so many. So I'll just put these ones out and switch them out for a new bunch, and I'll show you how to make that maybe in a different video. You see what I did, because I finally have something other than just sunflowers. Not much, but I do have a couple of zinnia, and my Ami have started to come through. So hopefully I'll be able to make a little bit more of an interesting bunch instead of just sunflowers on sunflowers on sunflowers. So thanks for checking out my channel. If you like this video and you want to continue seeing what I'm getting from the garden and what I'm doing with what I get from the garden, then don't forget to hit the subscribe button and follow along. Thanks for staying with me this far, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye!